How useful would Mario power-ups be in real life? So recently I made a short about how useful Mario power-ups would be in real life, and I thought to myself that there's so many more power-ups to talk about, and I figured that I should make a long-form video about it. So when rating these power-ups, I'm not going to be rating them based on how powerful they are, but I'm instead going to be rating them based on how practical they would be in the real world. I hope that makes sense. Anyways, let's get into it. So in the short I made, I talked about the Super Mushroom and Fire Flower, so I'm not going to talk about them in this video. But the first power-up I am going to talk about is the Cloud Flower. The Cloud Flower is a power-up that allows you to create floating platforms made from, you guessed it, clouds. It came from Mario Galaxy 2, and despite not being too powerful, it is quite practical in day-to-day life. If there's something on a shelf that's just barely out of reach, then create a cloud platform. If there's a cat stuck in a tree like a movie scenario, then create a cloud platform. If you feel like going to space, then create a ton of cloud platforms. Now I know in the games you need to constantly replenish your cloud platform storage by getting more cloud flowers, but for the sake of the list, I'm gonna say that the power-ups are permanent and don't need to be replenished, and can't be lost. But one thing that I won't ignore is the fact that if Mario touches water in the games, the cloud platforms you previously created will disappear. So if it's raining, I guess you're out of luck. I'm assuming if you also drink water, you'll lose it, but I might be wrong. The water problem is a major setback in terms of convenience, but the power-up does have some pretty good benefits, so I'm going to give it a final score of 6 out of 10. Now for the next power-up. Now this next power-up is from the most recent mainline Mario game, Mario Wonder. The power-up is the Elephant Fruit. The Elephant Fruit turns you into an elephant with some human characteristics, such as the fact that you can stand on 2 feet. While using the power-up, you can use your trunk to hit enemies and to break blocks. You can also store the water in your trunk and release the water elsewhere. With this power-up, you'd be extremely powerful, and I don't think anyone would want to mess with you. If you wanted to, you could probably become a world champion boxer. Or if you needed to water stuff, you could water it by using your trunk. But at the same time, I don't think you'd fit through a doorway. You'd be so big that you would have trouble getting in cars and stuff like that. And you can forget about being stealthy. Even though you'd be wicked powerful, I feel like the fact that you're so big and you can barely fit anywhere takes the power-up down a lot of points. For this reason, I'm giving it a ranking of 3 out of 10 in terms of practicality, because while there are niche uses for it, I feel like the cons outweigh the pros. This next power-up is another flower. It originates from New Super Mario Bros. 2. It's the Gold Flower. Now this power-up is extremely useful in my opinion. In the game, the power-up allows Mario and Luigi to turn blocks and enemies into gold. Now if this was in the real world, I assume that it'd work for regular items such as a remote or something. But if you're able to turn items into gold, I don't know if you'd be able to choose which items you can turn into gold. Because if you can't, you're kind of screwed. Imagine you give one of your parents a hug and they just turn into gold. That's kind of like the story of King Midas. If you haven't heard of it, then look it up. But I don't think the power-up works like that, considering that in the game, you shoot balls that turn things into gold. So I'm assuming that you do have the choice to turn only certain things into gold. So I believe you won't have the situation of turning your entire family into gold statues. The power-up is extremely practical. If you use it right, you could never have to work another day in your life. You could turn some items into gold and sell them for a gazillion dollars. I can't think of any other ways you can use this item, but just for the one reason of being able to turn things into gold and being able to sell them, gives us an instant 9 out of 10. I only gave it a 9 because even though it's not a Midas touch situation, there's still a possibility of you turning the wrong thing into gold by accident. Now, the Double Cherry is a unique power-up. It comes from Super Mario 3D World. You might think that it'd be awesome because you have multiple clones of yourself, but the thing is that the clones copy your movements, so you couldn't just tell your clones to do something for you, considering that they mirror your movements. If you wanted your clones to do your homework, you'd be out of luck, unless you were doing your homework right next to your clone, so I guess if you needed to write something on multiple pieces of paper, it'd be useful. I know this section was short, but I don't really know what else to say about the Double Cherry. It's a unique power-up, but it's not too versatile for the real world, unless you need to fight someone. For this reason, it's getting a 3 out of 10. On to the next power-up. The next power-up is also from Mario 3D World. It's the Super Bell. It allows you to climb walls and scratch things. Pretty much any abilities that a cat has, you have. It also allows you to do a little dive move and accelerate downwards extremely quickly. These abilities could be excellent if you were a spy or something, and the fact that you can climb things is helpful too. Similarly to the Cloudflower's platforms from earlier, the Super Belt could let you reach things that are in areas that you wouldn't normally be able to get to. If you need to hang a picture up in a high place, this power-up would be perfect, and you can forget about ever using a ladder. This is all great until you consider the fact that when you gain these abilities, you also gain the look of a cat. I don't think I would want to have these abilities if I constantly had to wear a cat suit, but I guess this video isn't a fashion contest. I know this video is mainly focused on the abilities of the power-ups and not the look, but I figured I'd mention it. All in all, this is a pretty solid power-up, so I'm going to be giving it a 7 out of 10 in terms of practicality. Now, I'm going to be grouping these two power-ups together because they are extremely similar with very slight differences. These power-ups are both from the new Super Mario Bros. Series. The Ice Flower allows you to shoot ice from your hands to freeze enemies. This is very similar to the Fire Flower, except for the fact that instead of shooting fire, you're shooting ice. The Penguin Suit works much the same way, except for the fact that you can slide. And I'm not really going to talk much about the sliding feature of the Penguin Suit, because I honestly can't think of many practical things you could do from sliding on your stomach. I mean, you could do that in real life without the Penguin Suit. The freezing ability, however, is much more useful. I'm assuming that you could use it to cool yourself down, but if you have to cool yourself down by turning yourself into a block of ice, that would not be too helpful. So I'm assuming that you can cool yourself down without doing that. You could also cool other things down using the ice ability. For instance, you know when you're about to eat food, but it's just way too hot? You could use the ice ability to cool it down. This might not sound too useful, but I believe that this ability would come in handy. I'm going to be giving these power-ups a 7 out of 10. This is because while the cooling down ability is helpful and practical, I don't know how often you'd really be using it. Now this power-up is an interesting one. It is the Mini Mushroom. As I was doing research for this video, I found out that it technically originates from Mario Party 4, but I know it from the new Super Mario Bros. Series, so I'm going to be going over what it does in those games. The Mini Mushroom makes you really small, but in turn, it makes you swift and even lets you do a little glide floaty thingy when you jump. This power-up isn't too powerful, considering that you can't really damage enemies, but this isn't a power ranking. This is a ranking of how useful each power-up would be in real life. But still, I honestly can't think of much use for being tiny. I mean, the Mini Mushroom pretty much just makes you the size of Kevin Hart. It's not completely useless, but it's also not that useful. The only thing that I can see it being used for in the real world is for people working in jobs where they need to get into tiny areas or something like that. I'm going to be giving this power-up a 2 out of 10 for those reasons. This is a power-up that I'm sure a lot of you are expecting to be on the list. It's the OneUp. They originated from the original Super Mario Bros. Game. This makes it the oldest power-up on the list. I don't want this section to seem like I'm overhyping the OneUp, but I pretty much only have good things to say. I mean, if these were real, you'd never have to worry about dying. If you had enough, you'd pretty much be immortal. This power-up would be useful for people who have dangerous jobs. For instance, when people work on construction, they sometimes go up to high places and all it takes is one wrong step and they'd fall right off the building they're working on. With the OneUps, these tragedies could be completely avoided. Other tragedies could also be avoided, including when people lose their lives to unfortunate circumstances, such as sickness or hunger. But there is one thing that I feel like I should mention. This list is kind of centered around you only having the power-up, but hypothetically, if everybody had one-ups, it'd be chaos. I hate to sound like Thanos, but if everybody stayed alive, then we'd run out of resources, space, and other things. This power-up would be great if only you had it, but it's kind of dependent on the situations you're in. Like if you were an office worker, I feel like you'd need this power-up less than if you were in the army or something. I know I said I mostly had positive things to say, but I figure I'd bring up a few downsides of it. For all these reasons, I'm going to give the OneUp a score of 8 out of 10. And just like that, the final ranking is done. I really enjoyed making this video, and I'd love to make a part 2. If there are any power-ups that you noticed I missed, leave a comment letting me know what power-up you'd like to see in part 2. If I see your comment, and think the power-up would be good in the next part, I'll shout you out. If you don't mind subscribing, that would really help. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.